If anyone has any questions on the context, unfortunately, you guys cannot hear the video, but I could. I'm open for questions, but let's keep the panel going. And if Enos can get it going, we'll listen to it at the end. What are the pros and cons of white people apologizing to black people for racism?
So I'll go ahead and explain a little bit about the video since we don't have the audio for it really quick. So that you have here, this is a video where you have a group of white people praying and apologizing to African Americans for racism. And so it's a pretty lengthy video. I don't know how long it lasted in real time, but on the video, you see it there for a while. You see the black people, some are tearing up. They're also in prayer as well. To some extent, some of them are. And so you just see a lot of people that are emotional on both sides. So that will open up the discussion there.
Okay, let's start with Candy. Candy, how do you feel about that? Are there pros? What are the pros? Let's go with pros first, and then we'll come back around and deal with cons. What are the pros to black people, or excuse me, white people apologizing to black people for racism?
Ooh, okay. So I think, I mean, really and truly, we all know there's racism in every ethnicity. And I think the pros would be that it brings people together, but there needs to be more of an understanding of, and I think that's being that I grew up in the deep South. I grew up with the rebel flags and all that kind of stuff, but I am nowhere near racist. My ex-husband was black. My grandchildren are mixed.
You're not black anymore, Candy?
Huh? What?
You said they were black. He said
they're
not black anymore.
Was black. I said you're not black anymore.
He's not black anymore.
Yeah, I want to be.
What we need from you is understanding.
Hey guys, just listen to this. This is why Vulcan does podcasts and he's not a music artist. All right.
Right.
Let's go with Coach Andre. How do you feel about this, man? What are the pros of white people apologizing to black people for racism?
One of the pros is the only way to actually have connection with each other is to really have accountability for your actions. But in this particular point, it's not really, it may or may not be their specific actions. It could be those of their forefathers and ancestors. But I will say that the positive is it could be a step in the right direction towards healing, towards mending, towards working together to realize that we're in this thing called life together. So that could be a positive.
Okay. Very good statement. Aki, what you got, man?
I will say this honestly: the white people who would apologize for racism are already allies. I'm not worried about them. I want to tap the people who are not apologizing for racism, the ones who sit on their soapbox and stand up there and talk about everything that's crazy. They're riding around with those flags on the back of their trucks, harassing everybody on the freeway. Those are the people that need to be contacted about apologies for racism. I'm not worried about the allies already. You don't need to apologize to me, and I already know who you are. But there's a caveat to this also.
Okay.
A lot of times, because I have white friends, I've had lots of white friends my whole life. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, the state of black and whiteism. Okay, I can tell you this, that a lot of times, I haven't really experienced this in Georgia, but in Texas, I have experienced it. You'll have a white ally that stands with you until it's no longer convenient. And then all of a sudden, they jump back on the other side. I don't need those types of allies. I don't want those allies.
Let me pause you right there, Aki. Let me pause you right there. So the question is, what are the pros of white people apologizing? Now, I know we're not talking about the unapologetic because they're not apologizing, right? Let's talk about the Caucasian, our brothers and sisters who are apologizing. What are the pros of that?
I love it. It's amazing.
Aki approves. He approves of white people apologizing to black people for racism. Miss Crystal D, How do you feel about this? What are the pros of white people apologizing to black people for racism? And have you?
A pro that I would say is for white people apologizing is maybe for both races, all races, to realize really at the end of the day, we're all created by God and we're all human.
Amen.
And if you cut you open and you cut me open,
We both bleed.
we're both going to bleed red. So I was trying to think of the word and my brain, sorry, I work 12-hour shifts and my brain is slightly dead, but where you have understanding on both sides, compassion, empathy, where
Common
you're
ground, empathy.
empathetic.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right.
Got it.
That's a lovely answer, Crystal. Thank you. I'm gonna go. Let's go, Will. Talk to us, Will. What are the pros of white people apologizing to black people for racism?
I mean, I guess it just shows compassion, on a human level, saying I'm sorry. This is what is upon you, and this is what has happened and taken place. And yeah, man, that's basically all it is. Probably not even a step necessarily needed. I mean, as long as you understand and recognize the benefits that came along with everything, even though you weren't directly involved, it's a heavy burden to place on anybody. So for people to walk around with that, as they would call it, white guilt, I would rather it be more understanding and say, yo, let's work on what we can do to get all of the sections where, you're being basically left out or marginalized, man, or being attacked to stop your progression. Just tell me you understand. But the fact that, people would even offer an apology, is always a pro. That's a good thing.
Okay, good. So we like the apology. We want to see a little bit more action though. I'm gonna scoot up here to Miss Victoria Taylor. Thank you for waiting patiently. What do you think? What are the pros of white people apologizing to black people for racism, Miss Taylor?
I think it's a step in the right direction. It's like they're apologizing for their forefathers' sins, right? So that's what they're trying to do. It's not that they, are racist or anything like that, but it's like you carry that weight and like Will said, that guilt of enslaving people, treating them, mistreating them, sexually assaulting them, things like that. So I think if I was of Caucasian descent and a group of people was like, let's get together and apologize, I wouldn't have an issue with apologizing, because even if it wasn't something that I naturally did or so I think it was a step in the right direction, just recognizing the hurt, the pain that a race endured. So I think that's it.
That's a good answer. That's a very good answer. I like that.
Thank you.
Enos, what you got, my brother? What are the pros of white people apologizing to black people for
the pros? One of the pros I could think of, it could reduce conflict. Especially the last 12 years, there's been a lot of racial tension. So one of the pros, I would say, it reduces conflict. Also, it creates a space for dialogue, like what we're doing right now. You see something like that, it's going to get us to really get an opportunity to examine this really critically. So I'm excited about it.
All right, so we got to step in the right direction. We have an open dialogue, which is integral, important to moving forward through race relations in the future. Thank you, Enos. I'm gonna give my little opinion before we get to Vulcan. I think it's one of the pros of it is they identify themselves, right? Just like any people that look like them. We don't know whether what you are, which side of the fence you're on until you identify yourself. And while this is not necessary, in my opinion, the kind of show of it all, I think it identifies you in public, which you get a lot of people who are on the fence or, who want to quietly kind of come and let you know that they're allies. But, actions speak louder than words. So I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. And if you look at some of the clips, this is not them kind of bowing down. It's bowing down to the Lord. And at the end, they're hand in hand with their black brothers and sisters. So it's showing a bit of unity outside of the properly chagrined, if you will. Without further ado, let's go ahead and end this portion of the question with Vulcan. He has his collar shirt on today, so he didn't come to play. All right.
Hey,
Vulcan, what do you think, man?
So for me, y'all, I'm gonna take a different approach to this. I don't think there's any positives to what happened there.
I told y'all, he got that collar shirt on, man.
Any perceived positives, any perceived positives is like I would look at it more like eating, chips or some type of refined sugar. You may feel full for a little while, but you're not getting a lot of sustenance off of it. So I would say that there's really no positives to it, and whatever feels like a positive is really not.
So you think this is an empty gesture?
I would say at best it's an empty gesture. At best? But I think there's a lot. I think it's full of a lot of stuff, but it's just not pros.
Okay, so these are empty calories. All right, Aki, you have a rebuttal for the Vulcan?
Yeah, I mean, just to help clarify, I think what Vulcan is saying, I think it's an unnecessary gesture. If you're already rocking with our side of the cause, there's no need to apologize. And that's what I was trying to say earlier. Yeah, apologize for what exactly?
Help the bear. Apologize for what?
Yeah, what are you apologizing for if you already know the cause?
Okay, Vulcan. Aki says, real quick, I'm gonna give Vulcan a chance to clarify. Vulcan, is Aki correct in his translation? Do you mean unnecessary?
I definitely think there's a lot of unnecessary in there. I was only limiting my words because I know we're going to get into the cons. So most of what I'm going to say is going to be in the cons category.
Okay, but Miss Candy, we have something before we.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, the apologizing is more, because I know I've done it with some of my Black friends and stuff. I've said, especially if they've been attacked by another white person, I'm so sorry for their stupid ignorance. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about: ignorance, and not having the knowledge and the understanding. Like Crystal said, we all bleed the same. So.
Okay. All right. Everyone gave their opinions on the pros. Very good conversation. Miss Candy, let's start back with you. Actually, let's go the opposite direction. We'll start with Crystal. Crystal, are there any cons to Black or white people apologizing to Black people for racism? What do you think?
I would say a con would be, basically, again, back to my original statement, is, I don't even know if it's a con, but the same thing where, I'm apologizing for the color of my skin. I mean, that's questioning, how I was created again, and we're all created by God.
I agree with that. Well, I would ask you this: do you think they're apologizing because they're white, or do you think they're apologizing for the actions of their ancestors?
But do they know their exact actions that their ancestors did? Like, do they know, okay, my great grandfather, did whatever. They owned a plantation and whatever. Do you know your complete ancestry? I know some of mine. I don't know 100%. I know my great grandmother was 100% Choctaw Indian. Past that, I don't know too much. So I'm apologizing for something that my family may or may not have done. I don't know for certain.
Okay. That's a valid point. I do want to point out, for the sake of the panel, that slavery was not the only form of racism. You got Jim Crow, right? And even if you didn't own slaves or didn't own a plantation, racism or discrimination based upon race was still very prevalent in, really to this day. That's not an indictment of anything that you said, Miss Candy. Excuse me, not Miss Candy. Jesus Christ.
Crystal, I just use that as an example, but yeah, I was raised, partially in the South, and so I same thing like Candy said with the rebel flags and stuff like that. I just used that example, but yes, you're right.
Okay, awesome. All right, let's go with Mr. Aki in the middle.
I just want to touch on this one thing, Miss Crystal, and I understand what you're saying, but you have to understand there's a level of complicity that's involved when it comes to this type of thing. Your great grandparents may not have been whipping slaves per se, but trust me, when there was a lynching going on, they weren't going to stand up there and say, "Hey, don't do that." They went along with it, whether they were in presence or in silence, not there, because they didn't want to get the backlash from their own people. And we all understand how that goes. We all understand how that happens. We all understand how that plays out. It's like when in Rome, you have to do as the Romans do, basically. And that's not saying that your grandparents were guilty. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that if they wanted to live, they had to comply.
Okay, Aki, real quick, do you think that if that's the case, let's just say that for a fact that your ancestors were not guilty but complicit, a victim of their environment. Do you think that those folks should apologize, or do you think they're kind of indemnified of any wrongdoing?
See, this is a tricky and slippery slope that we're going down, because you asking somebody to apologize for something in a time where they couldn't do it, even if they wanted to. They would have to take the person, off to the side to maybe a slave quarter or something and say, you know what? I'm so sorry about what happened to you. You know what I mean? But then when they take that same very person that he just apologized to out there to lynch his ass on the freaking tree, they're not going to stop them from doing it, is my point.
Okay. So they do owe an apology. Well, I don't say but they're okay to apologize.
Only in private.
Because they didn't stand against.
Only in private.
Only okay. All right, Miss Candy.
We're talking about at that time. We're not talking about. Are we talking about today? We're talking about back then.
Well, I mean, again, racism and
context,
discrimination based on races has spanned, especially in America, pretty much the entire existence of it. So, if you're being era specific and talking about slavery times, then I can understand. We understand where you're coming from. Is your statement specific to that?
Well, no. I want to say this one more thing. And remember when Kendrick Lamar did his Super Bowl performance?
Mm-hmm.
There was a family that a white guy came on and said, you know what? Hey, look how everybody's enjoying this. And then he showed his own family sitting down there watching the performance. And what was very interesting to me was that the kids that were watching Kendrick's performance knew better than to stand up and really dance how they wanted to in front of their parents.
Okay. And you say that to say
very telling.
Okay, so we got a little bit of white restraint,
exactly.
Even when enjoying. Okay,
exactly.
All right, let's go with Candy.
Fresh, if you don't mind, I want to give some context to the video.
Say that again.
Eno's asked you want to give some context to the video. Go ahead, Eno, speak up.
Yeah, the video, just to give you the what, when, and why. The what, there was apologizing because what happened in George Floyd. The time period was during COVID. I think it was it was 2020 in Houston, and this was during COVID when George Floyd just got murdered. So they was apologizing for the police brutality. Asking for forgiveness for that.
Okay. At the same time, burning down the city themselves and blaming it on Black people.
Okay, Miss Candy, with that clarification, what are your thoughts on the cons?
Okay, I don't necessarily know about as far as the cons of it. I don't know that I have an opinion about that. But what I do know is, if you're going back to slavery times, you guys have to look at back Egypt in the Bible. They had slaves. They were Black people, the Egyptians. Um, we know that if you go back in certain times of history, there are Black people who were owners of slaves themselves. So
Hold on, Aki.
I think the racism and the slavery, I think that's two different topics. So if we're looking at the apology of racism, we have to look at racism itself is nothing but pure hatred. It's because you guys know me being in the family of Black people, if you will. There's racism among the Black people, whether you're lighter color or darker color. You know, there's
officially called colorism.
Right. I guess that's what you call it. So we have to look at what is the root cause of racism. It is hatred. And bottom line, whether you're Black, white, brown, and it's like Crystal said, when we start looking at our ancestries and stuff, like she said, my grandmother was full-blooded Cherokee Indian. And I'm North Georgia girl here. So, and when we talk about the guys with the trucks with the rebel flags, some of my Black friends had their rebel flags driving on their trucks. So again, it's all about the ignorance and the understanding of what was that rebel flag? What did it truly represent and stuff? So I think the cons of the apology, I think it might stir up more than what it should. Because like Crystal said, what are we truly apologizing for? To me, we're apologizing for people being ignorant. Because that ignorance is whether you're white, Black, or brown, or whatever.
I'm going to put it to you like this. Real quick before we go to Aki. Aki, I'm gonna give you 1 minute. 1 minute, because we got to move on. Oftentimes we're not apologizing for ignorance, because for us apologizing for ignorance, you would have to say that these people, most racists, genuinely did not understand or did not know. The fact of the matter is that's just not true, right? A lot of them understood. A lot of them are not, complete idiots, especially when you get up into the higher echelons in society, right? The rich folks. Those people are not ignorant to, the fact. You have plenty of proof that, like Crystal was saying earlier, Black and white people biologically are the same, right? In a lot of spaces, right, where you get buck breaking and stuff, you recognize Black people as superior in certain ways. So this is not an ignorance thing where you truly think that there is a sect or a segment of folks, I believe, who just honestly don't know. But to color the entirety of racism with that, I think is disingenuous. Not to you, for anyone who would do that, is not entirely accurate. Aki, you got a minute, my guy.
Okay. Now, Candy, you put a lot on the floor. I try to listen to the rules of the Vulcan Soapbox before, and I'm going to try to stick to that. I tried not to. First of all, let's just talk about slavery around the world. The difference between American chattel slavery and slavery around the world is totally 100% different. The difference between what you're talking about slavery is called indentured servant slavery. In America, we did not have that. We had chattel slavery, which is totally different, which meant that we could not ever get out of what we were in. We could never get out of it. Guess what? They raped our women and took our children. We suckled your babies and cleaned your bed in your house. We had to go by different names, and we still do it today. Like, I have cousins that have names that I don't even know their real name, my own actual cousins.
10 seconds, Aki.
Okay, so there's a huge difference between indentured slavery and chattel slavery. Let's just keep that 100% clear.
Okay, Candy, offline, and everyone on the panel, not just Candy, but go do your research on the difference between indentured servitude and chattel slavery. There's a difference, and it's pretty educational, all right? Cool. Coach Andre, what you got, sir? What are the cons of white people apologizing?
So for me, I really believe that one of the biggest cons for me personally is now I have to raise the question, is this genuine?
Okay.
That's the biggest thing for me. Is this
Why do
genuine?
you raise that question real quick?
Because unfortunately, when people do things with perceived kindness,
Okay.
there can also be a back end intention that I
Okay.
may not know about.
So you think they're doing it for the gram?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know.
Okay.
That's the whole point of me saying that is I don't know. So that's the first thing. The second thing that comes to mind is now I have to watch your actions. Because apology means nothing if you don't change your actions afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So if you tell me you're
That's a good point.
sorry, okay, cool. Now what are we gonna do next? Now what are you gonna do to change the situation and change what we're going through? Because if you just say I'm sorry and nothing changes,
right,
then you just wasted my time.
That's a very good point. So we're looking at is this for the gram? Are they doing it for the show of it all? And what are their actions going to be? Let's talk actions speak louder than words. Thank you, Coach. Let's go to Will real quick. What you got, Will? Give me a couple cons.
Shout out to Coach.
I mean, personally, man, I'm kind of looking for one, and I really don't see one necessarily, honestly, to be honest with you.
Okay, Will, we got all pros for that. You don't think there's nothing wrong with
man, it's huh?
So you don't think there's anything wrong with them apologizing?
No, man. Like I said, I don't think it's necessary, but you know, it's nothing but a positive going to come out of that, because what I'm seeming to observe, to me, what it looks like in the climate we in, a lot of these conversations, are intentionally trying to implement new laws to not get this understanding. And somebody mentioned earlier, there's a lack of knowledge and a lack of information and understanding. But
and he was talking about ignorance. Go ahead.
Yeah. So when you look at worldwide consistently, when it comes to race being a factor, that's where I think it comes into play deeper than just, the last 400 or 500 years in America. You know what I mean? Worldwide, there seems to be basically lighter skinned white supremacist sort of network where the darker skinned peoples of the earth everywhere, seem to get the short end of the stick. And even their stories about what happened to those past civilizations are being, hidden, wiped over. So for me, when you look at the race and get a little deeper into the whole issue, man, worldwide for thousands of years there's been this struggle, and we're seeing now, and we've been seeing, but people now can see it, but the conversations about it don't seem to be wanting to feed people the real information. And that's why they call these things, basically whitewashed. Every civilization is kind of having their stories, wiped over. So it only hurts society as a whole. Worldwide, we're seeing it now with the whole, DEI situation, man. Me personally, I believe that.
Hold on. Let's not get into that. That's
my bad, fam.
No, you good. That's gonna open up another can of worms. We won't got time to get into
I just don't understand why these things can't be taught, and I think that's where we get it mixed up. I mean, look at, even to go deeper, if Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, talks about the reasoning behind maybe we are kind of under attack, or maybe these people may feel threatened and want to keep their lifeline alive. And the only way to do that is to kind of stop the mixture between, us. So that's something to think about. And when you look at the construct of what we learn, even religiously.
Hold on. I don't want to get too deep into it.
Okay, my bad, man. My bad.
No, you good. So in full, in summary, you don't think there's anything wrong with them apologizing, because that's the first step in kind of disappearing some of the things that are put in place to keep these conversations from happening. So the open dialogue is cool with you.
Thank you. I need these younger kids coming up to understand some of these things, and it's sad to watch them not have anybody who can, point them in that direction.
Okay, Miss Taylor, Miss Victoria Taylor, what you got? What are some of the cons?
Oh my God. So I remember seeing the image or video, during that time. And honestly, I was upset because I was like, spare me the BS. I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear it. Where was this apology before the viral killing of George? That was my thinking.
Okay.
Moving forward from 2020 and whenever it took place, working with predominantly Caucasian people, teaching their kids, living in their communities, things like that. I'm like, okay, apology accepted. You know what I'm saying? But it doesn't take away the sting of it, of slavery or racism, because it's always there. It's always there. If a fight break out today, I can be the one recording. I'm not even in the fight. They questioning me, asking me what's going on just because I am Black. So you have to realize that it's nice that you want to apologize, but everybody's not going to accept your apology. So that's just how it is.
So you think a con of it is that even if they do it or they mean it sincerely, it's not really changing anything.
Because people are going to have their own thinking. Like like I said, 2020, I was like, heck no, don't get down on a knee, don't apologize to me, don't say nothing to me.
Right.
More progressive and moving towards us coming in together as unity, I can see myself saying, okay, yeah, I accept that. But still, it's still in the back of my head, like,
okay,
I don't know if I trust you like that. So
Victoria said, I'm cool with it now, but I don't know if it means anything. Really,
right.
Not means anything fundamentally.
Exactly, right.
All right, Vulcan, who said most of his stuff was going to be in the cons list. Talk to the people, sir.
Well, I didn't go yet.
Oh, my fault. Hold on, Vulcan. Let's go with Enos. What's the cons of it?
All right, the cons, like I said, one of the positive things we'll be doing now as far as having a dialogue about it, I think that's pretty good. But that's still potential and perception, how we perceive things, or perspective. The cons, one of the cons, you can waste a lot of resources. The reason I'm saying you can waste a lot of resources because the reason why they apologize is not based on logic, it's based on faulty reasoning. This is a good example of the guilt by association, also known as the genetic fallacy. So people are apologizing and take accountability for one person's action. That's why I said that if that's the root of why people are doing this could, one, like I said earlier, you can waste resources. You see a lot of sponsors, people donating to these kind of cause. Two, white people going to end up losing their credibility altogether. I mean, not altogether, that's an absolute statement, but those that's doing these practices could lose their credibility.
Okay. So you think that they're wasting time and energy doing this, and it could impact the overall race of white people in this space?
Yeah, they're wasting time because it's not based on sound reasoning.
Okay. All right, I heard you mention the genetic fallacy.
I could pull that up. You can go to Vulcan now. Unless you can pull it up.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. And that's why you're doing that. Vulcan could go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, Vulcan. Let's talk. Let's go to Vulcan. Let's talk about how you feel about it, sir. What are the cons?
I won't go too deep into it because I know we've been on this for a little while, but I'll just say one of the main cons that I see with it is it's a very empty and vacuous thing to do, to apologize on behalf of people that existed in the past, aren't even alive anymore. Yeah. All it can really serve to do is an empty manipulative ploy. There's no way to do it any other kind of way. And so the con is, one, that the white people on that side think that this is in some way meaningful. On the Black side, you see them crying and lamenting what's going on. It's like they're so desperate for some type of empathy that they're willing to take any symbol of it that's not even the real thing. And so I think it's a con on both sides because, it reminds me of, I was listening to Dr. Umar Johnson one time talking, and he got a message coming in that says, hey, look, I'm just about to give up on the cause. You're our last hope. And whoever sent that message to him, I thought it was so sad that they're putting their last hope in Dr. Umar Johnson. You know, like you shouldn't be putting your hope in anybody like that. You know, you have hope in ideas, you have hope in certain outcomes and, you know, certain future events, but you should never place your hope into one person unless you're going to put it in, you know, to Jesus. But outside of that, you shouldn't be put into just man, right? Because people are going to fail you. And so them apologizing to them is empty unless they want to apologize for their personal racism that they've done in their own lives. That'll be maybe a meaningful thing. I would take that if they say, hey, look, I've done this, but it's easy to say apologize on behalf of somebody else. You know, there's a Mark Twain quote, and he's probably not the best person to quote when it comes to these racial conversations, but he has a quote that says, the weakest of all weak things, he says, the weakest of all weak things is the virtue that has not been tested in the fire. And so it's easy to say, I'm sorry and all that kind of stuff. You don't have to show anything in the moment. And the fact that people on the other side don't understand that that's not a meaningful thing to do. It doesn't have any, it's like when somebody says, I'm sorry you feel that way. Somebody does something wrong to you, and instead of apologizing for the actual thing, they apologize for the way you feel about it. Some people will take that. Some people in their naivete, will take that as a real apology. And it just shows they're just grasping for anything. But the reality is there's no substance in that. So that to me, the con is that the black people are being con and the white people over there are delusional.
I want to add, can I add something to Vulcan was saying first? You know,
go ahead, sir.
I wanted to say, when you said that what stood out when you said the one person apologizing for yourself. If you think about the core purpose of apologizing is acknowledging harm. So these group of people are acknowledging the harm they're doing. This is why I say the guilt by association. They are saying that they harm individuals and they apologize on their behalf. That's what I say it's backwards. But yeah, that was my 2 cents on that.
Okay, Help the Bear says forgiveness is not an occasional act. It is a permanent attitude. Martin Luther King Jr. says forgive the white folks. Oh no, Martin Luther King Jr. didn't say this. Help the Bear said forgive the white folks already. Sheesh, get off their backs, leave them be.